Democrats are plotting their strategy for this year's elections. They got a pep talk from both Vice President Biden and President Obama at their retreat this week in Maryland. But it wasn't just about firing up the rank and file. President Obama made clear the priorities Democrats should be fighting for on Capitol Hill.
There are some big things that we have to do that I cannot do through executive action, where we have to get Congress and where the American people are on our side. A federal minimum wage law is one of them. Another, though, is making sure that we've got a smart immigration policy in this country that grows our economy, gets people out of the shadows, makes sure that our businesses are thriving. That's got to be a top priority.
Joining me now, California Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff. Sir, thank you for being here. We talked about two priorities we're hearing there about immigration reform and higher minimum wage. You tell me the prospects of getting either one of those done.
Well, I think it's going to be a challenge either way. As we saw just a couple weeks ago, the Republicans announced 5 principles on immigration reform, and then a week later they announced a principle that trumped all other 5, which is don't do anything to divide the GOP base. So they indicated they're not likely to bring it up this year, which means that we're going to have to try to force their hand. This is enormously important for the country. It enjoys widespread support in the country. It would be good for our economy. It would be fair to millions of people.
And how do you force their hand? What do you mean by that? How are you going to do that?
Well, there are a number of ways that it can be done. Certainly turning up the heat, turning up the pressure, focusing on those Republicans that represent increasingly minority districts or are in marginal seats. It might take the form of a discharge petition where you can literally force something to come up on the floor. If you can get enough people to sign a petition, that's also a way of kind of leveraging these marginal members. But the only thing that's going to work is turning up the political pressure sufficient that the Republicans say, okay, we're going to have to do this to survive as a party. We're not there yet, but that's certainly going to be a big focus for us.
You mentioned the discharge petition. Are you thinking about going that route? And again, that's a legislative term there, essentially a maneuver to force something onto the floor. But is this something you're thinking about in both the minimum wage and immigration?
I think there's an expectation that we'll start with a discharge petition on the minimum wage. For those that are around the country saying that they support it, this is a way of actually putting their name on the line, literally quite on the line, to force a vote on this issue. It'll help if the Senate can pass something that will add to the pressure in the House. And if some of the marginal Republican members see their Republican senators support it, that will also help and get them on board. So I would expect to see a discharge petition on the wage issue first, and then depending on how that bears fruit, we may see one on the immigration issue as well.
And sir, how tricky does this get for you all in Congress in trying to negotiate with your Republican colleagues if the president keeps upsetting a lot of Republicans by taking executive action, or at least threatening to take executive action? It was a theme, really, in a lot of ways, of his State of the Union speech, saying, I will act where I can on my own. How tricky does it make your job up on Capitol Hill?
Well, I think the president really, for the entire administration has tried to reach out to the GOP, but that largely has not been reciprocated. And at a certain point, you have to say, look, I'm going to continue to try to work with you, but if you won't work with me, I'll have no choice but to do what I can within my own executive power. So, frankly, I think when the speaker came out the other day and said that they would probably not take up immigration because the GOP members didn't trust the president, that was really quite a charade. The real reason was, as other members of the GOP said, they don't want to divide their conference. It has nothing to do with trusting or not trusting the president. And in fact, you may have seen George Will wrote a powerful column in favor of comprehensive reform, saying that that was kind of a cop-out on the part of the GOP.
Some good news on health care reform, the Affordable Care Act. The president put out this week, or the administration at least did, good news, 3 million Americans signing up. How are you going to go about, though, running on? What is the pitch to run on for you and fellow Democrats on health care reform when you continue to get pounded by conservatives over this law?
Well, the pitch is actually quite straightforward to make, and that is that the Affordable Care Act is extending coverage to millions of people. It's lowering prescription drug costs for seniors. It's allowing parents to keep their kids on their policies. It's allowing people with pre-existing conditions to get health care coverage. Mostly we have to focus on telling the success stories of those people that were denied coverage in the past that are getting coverage now. So I think that the case is there to be made. We also want to point out the fact that, okay, it's not perfect. We can improve this. We can strengthen this. But we just can't repeal it and go back to letting the insurance companies dictate whether we get care or not. So I think that message, let's strengthen it, let's improve it. But look at the good it's already delivering. I think that's a winning message for us.
Well, Representative Schiff, I want to ask, hopefully I can have you back. I hope you'll agree to come back and talk to me, because I had some more stuff. I certainly want to get the NSA reform. That story's not going away, but I asked too many questions that got caught up in some of the other politics. So I hope we can have you back, sir. Thanks so much for being here.
TJ, I look forward to it.